All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at something absolutely massive today. How thousands of crores, real money, flow into India every single year, and the 50-year-old law that acts as the gatekeeper for all of it. Every year, huge amounts of money cross into India to fund incredibly vital work. Hospitals, schools, disaster relief, and scientific research. But there is a very specific legal framework that decides exactly who is allowed to receive that money, how it has to be tracked once it gets here, and what happens if those rules are broken. It's called the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or FCRA. And with some brand new changes introduced in 2026, it is literally more relevant than ever to understand exactly how this whole machine works.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to define what the FCRA actually is, trace exactly how that money moves, break down the brand new 2026 updates, zoom out to look at the global picture, and finally, we'll bust some of the biggest myths out there.
What is the FCRA? The foundation of foreign funding.
First things first, and this is crucial, the FCRA doesn't just put a blanket ban on foreign money. Not at all. It's actually administered by the Ministry of Home Affairs to do three specific things. First, it decides who gets the money. Second, exactly how it's tracked. And third, it restricts a very narrow set of activities that could impact India's sovereignty. So, valid donations for health, education, disaster relief, those are still perfectly fine. And there are tens of thousands of groups legally doing incredible work right now.
Think of the law as being built on 5 solid pillars. You've got transparency, meaning verifiable banks, and clear donor info. Accountability, tracing every single rupee down to the ground level through annual audits. Sovereignty, keeping foreign funds out of democratic institutions. But at the same time, it's designed to enable genuine work to continue uninterrupted. And honestly, when you put all that together, it builds massive public confidence in the voluntary sector itself.
Moving on to Part 2, Following the Money, the Mechanics and Evolution.
Okay, so the FCRA isn't some brand new overnight restriction. It's literally a 50-year evolution. It was enacted way back in 1976, mandatory registration hit in '84, and then a huge overhaul happened in 2010 with 5-year renewals. Then boom, 2020 completely changes the game by funneling all foreign funds into a single State Bank of India account to create one massive audit trail. Interestingly enough, in 2022, they actually raised the limit you can get from relatives abroad from 1 lakh to 10 lakh rupees. And now, the 2026 updates. You can see the pattern, right? It's a steady, constant march toward tighter accounting.
Let's turn all this legal jargon into a physical journey. If an organization wants foreign funding, they got to operate for 3 years first just to get registered. Once they're in, every single rupee has to land in that one specific SBI branch in New Delhi. They have to explicitly declare their purpose, spend the money on that specific purpose, and file an online annual return, Form FC4. And it's not a lifetime pass. You got to prove you played by the rules and renew it every 5 years, or it just automatically lapses.
Now keep this number in your head, 20%. Today, a max of just 20% of foreign funds can be used for administrative overhead. That cap used to be 50%, but the law was tweaked to make sure the vast majority, 80% of all that money, actually hits the ground. Funding the actual schools, hospitals, or conservation projects it was meant for, instead of just paying for rent and office space.
But there's a hard line drawn for certain people. If you hold a constitutional role, you are permanently barred from receiving foreign contributions. Period. We're talking election candidates, sitting legislators, judges, government servants, and news editors or publishers. The logic is incredibly straightforward here. These roles are the absolute bedrock of India's democratic and constitutional institutions. So keeping external monetary influence completely out of the picture is just a core pillar of sovereignty.
All right, Part 3, the 2026 updates, the new legislative catalyst.
So there's a really important distinction we need to make right off the bat. We're actually looking at a 2-track update. On one side, we have the 2026 Amendment Bill, which is currently pending in Parliament. On the other side, we have the 2026 rules, which are already notified and totally active on the ground right now.
Let's look at that pending bill first. It's really trying to plug some operational gaps. For a long time, it wasn't super clear what happens to foreign-funded assets if an NGO's registration lapses. This bill sets up a designated authority to manage them. Importantly, it's a 2-stage process. Provisional first, so if you get your status back, you get your assets back. It also explicitly protects the religious character of places of worship. What's super interesting is that the maximum jail time for a violation actually drops from 5 years down to just 1 year. Plus, it bakes in clear judicial oversight, and state agencies now need the central government's okay before they can even start an investigation.
Meanwhile, the active rules are already live and kicking. Now, when registering, you can't just pick broad, open-ended categories anymore. You have to lock in specific purposes and operate in specific states. Religious activities are explicitly listed, but proselytization is a no-go. And to renew, you gotta prove you're actually doing the work by showing you've utilized at least 10 lakh rupees over 2 years. The reporting is also hyper-detailed now. We're talking project-wise spending breakdowns and tracing the money all the way back to the absolute original foreign donor, even through intermediaries.
Part 4. The global context. India on the world map.
You know, people often talk about the FCRA like it's this uniquely Indian restriction. But let's look at the global picture. The US has had FCRA since 1938. Australia set up their scheme in 2018, Canada just passed theirs in 2024, and the UK's registry went live in 2025. There is an undeniable, massive global trend here. Every major democracy is actively leaning into much stricter foreign influence transparency right now.
And this isn't just politicians pushing for this. It's the public. Look at Europe. 81% of Europeans see covert foreign interference as a serious problem. That's a huge number, and it's exactly what's driving the EU to negotiate its own transparency directive as we speak. So, in a lot of ways, India has just had a version of this global consensus on the books since '76.
Finally, Part 5. Myths versus facts. Clearing the air.
Okay, let's do a rapid-fire myth bust. Myth number 1. The FCRA outright bans NGOs from taking foreign money. Total fiction. The fact is, the system is wide open as long as you follow the rules. In just the 2024 to 2025 period alone, over 16,200 registered groups received roughly 22,963 crore rupees. The money is definitely flowing. It just has to flow transparently.
Myth number 2. The 2026 changes let the government just instantly seize NGO assets. Nope. The reality is that the designated authority only steps in provisionally and only after a registration has lawfully lapsed. If the group fixes its paperwork and gets restored, the assets go right back. Plus, religious sites are explicitly, legally protected.
Myth number 3. If your FCRA registration is canceled, it means there was some severe criminal wrongdoing. Actually, scratch that. Many cancellations are purely administrative. We're talking missed filings or simply forgetting to renew. It's not always a headline scandal. And importantly, any cancellation is completely open to full judicial review.
So, knowing that literally every major democracy is moving toward tighter foreign funding rules, it leaves us with a pretty massive question. The FCRA isn't just an on-off switch. It's a whole evolving framework of disclosure. As the whole world moves in this exact same direction, how do we perfectly balance the absolute necessity of national sovereignty with the freedom needed for a thriving civil society? It is a serious tightrope walk. Something to really think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I hope it cleared things up for you.